When I first saw the house on Willow Creek Road, it looked perfect, almost too perfect. A quiet suburban dream tucked behind whispering pines, far from the noise of the city. It was the kind of place I'd always imagined myself in. A white two-story house with blue shutters, a large porch, and a faint smell of pine resin in the air. It was June when I moved in, sunlight filtering through tall trees, casting soft golden shadows across the freshly mowed lawn. I remember thinking, this feels like a new beginning. But beginnings, I would soon learn, can also be traps in disguise. I had just finalized my divorce and needed a reset. The house came cheap, almost suspiciously cheap. But the realtor brushed it off, saying the previous owners had moved suddenly. I didn't ask questions. I just wanted peace. The first few days went smoothly. I unpacked boxes, repainted the living room, and spent evenings sitting on the porch with a glass of wine, watching the woods sway in the summer breeze. But by the end of that first week, I began noticing little things. The first thing was the smell. At night, the house smelled faintly of wet earth, not like dampness, but like freshly turned soil. I checked the basement for leaks. Nothing. The second thing was the creaking. Every night around 2 a.m., I'd hear footsteps upstairs, slow and deliberate, crossing from one end of the hallway to the other. I tried convincing myself it was the house settling, but the sound was too rhythmic, too human. By the third night, I started sleeping with my door locked. One evening, I invited my sister, Laura, to visit. She's the skeptical type, always logical, never one to believe in anything supernatural. When she arrived, the house seemed fine, warm, peaceful, even charming. But as soon as night fell, the air changed. We were sitting in the living room chatting when she stopped mid-sentence. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. I froze. There it was again, the faint creak of footsteps upstairs. Laura frowned and got up, heading toward the staircase. I followed behind her, clutching my phone like a weapon. But as soon as we reached the top, the sound stopped. The hallway was empty, silent, but the air was cold enough to see our breath. That's when Laura noticed something strange. The attic door was slightly open, just enough for a thin line of darkness to peek through. She reached for it, but I stopped her. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. Instead, we decided to close the door and sleep in the living room together. The next morning, she left early, saying she had a weird feeling about the house. That day, I went up to the attic myself. Dust filled the air, and the sunlight filtered through small cracks in the roof, giving everything a hazy, ghostly glow. The attic was mostly empty, except for an old chest pushed against the wall. It looked heavy, made of oak, with brass corners and a rusted padlock. The moment I saw it, I felt something. Not fear exactly, but a deep, uneasy curiosity. The lock was brittle, and with a hammer, it broke easily. Inside the chest, I found photographs. Hundreds of them, black and white, sepia-toned, some newer but all showing the same thing. Families standing in front of the house. Different families. Different decades. But always this same house on Willow Creek Road. And in every photo, there was a strange figure standing in the background. A man tall with his head slightly tilted, wearing what looked like a wide-brimmed hat. In some photos, he was clearer than others, almost staring directly at the camera. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the photos in my head. Around midnight, I heard something. Not footsteps this time, but whispering. Soft, indistinct, like someone murmuring through the walls. I pressed my ear against the drywall. The voice was faint but unmistakable. It was saying my name, over and over. The photographs, all of them, were scattered across the attic floor, forming a perfect circle. And standing in the center was the tall man. His face was hidden in shadow, but I could feel his eyes on me. He didn't move, didn't speak. I couldn't even scream. I just backed away slowly until my foot hit the first step. Then he tilted his head, just like in the photos, and in that soft, broken whisper, I heard him say, "You shouldn't have dug them up." The next thing I remember is waking up on the porch at sunrise, trembling with dirt under my nails and mud on my shoes. The police found no signs of forced entry, no evidence of anyone else being there. But the attic chest and the photos were gone. I moved out the next week. But sometimes, late at night, I still dream of the man in the hat, standing at the edge of my bed, tilting his head in that same silent way. And when I wake up, I swear I can still smell it, that faint wet earth scent, like freshly turned soil, waiting for something new to be buried. I've never been the type to believe in ghosts. Even when I was a kid, I'd roll my eyes at horror movies and haunted house stories. But after what happened in that house in Maine, I can't even sleep in total darkness anymore. This isn't a ghost story the way you'd think. It's something much worse. Something that watches you not from another world, but from the same one. It started when I got transferred for work. My company was relocating a few employees to a smaller town just outside Bangor, and they offered me a 2-year housing deal. Rent-free, as long as I took care of a property they owned. The place was an old Victorian home, sitting on a lonely road called Birch Hollow Lane. From the outside, it was stunning. Ornate woodwork, a wraparound porch, tall windows that reflected the entire sky. It felt like stepping back in time. The real estate woman told me it had been unoccupied for a while. She didn't specify how long, and I didn't press. Free rent was free rent. I moved in mid-October, when the leaves were fire red and gold, carpeting the long, twisting driveway that led up to the property. At first it was perfect. The silence of the woods, the crisp air, the creak of the floorboards. It all felt peaceful, like the house had a soul. But that peace didn't last long. The first night, I noticed something strange. My bedroom door was open when I woke up, even though I was sure I had closed it. I brushed it off as wind or an uneven latch. The second night, the same thing happened, and the third. But by the fourth night, something else changed. I started waking up at exactly 3:03 a.m. every single night. No alarm, no noise, just an overwhelming sense that someone was in the room with me. It wasn't until the fifth night that I finally saw it, or rather, him. I woke up again at 3:03. The room was cold, colder than it should have been. I turned my head toward the open door, and there was a figure standing at the end of the hallway. Not moving, not breathing, just watching. I blinked, and he was gone. The next morning, I found muddy footprints leading from the front door up the stairs. But here's the thing. They stopped right outside my bedroom. I checked the locks. Everything was sealed. No windows open, no signs of forced entry. Still, I installed a new deadbolt that afternoon and tried not to think about it. But that night, I woke up again. 3:03 a.m. sharp. Only this time, the figure wasn't in the hallway. He was inside the room. He stood in the corner, motionless, his face hidden in shadow. I froze, too scared to move, too terrified to scream. My heart was pounding so loud it drowned out every sound. I blinked once, and just like before, he was gone. By morning, I was convinced I'd dreamed it, a hallucination from exhaustion. But when I looked in the corner, the carpet fibers were flattened, as if someone had been standing there for hours. I called the company that owned the property, asking if anyone else had keys. The woman on the line hesitated. "Not that I know of," she said, then paused. "But maybe you should call Mr. Langley. He used to maintain the place before it was sold." I reached out to Langley later that day. He was an older man, sounded kind but cautious. "You're staying at 42 Birch Hollow, right?" he asked. When I said yes, he went quiet for a moment. "Be careful in that house. Don't sleep upstairs. If you can help it, move out before winter." I asked him what he meant, but he hung up before I could get an answer. That night, I took his advice and tried sleeping on the couch downstairs. I left the lights on, TV running softly. Around midnight, I started drifting off. But then I heard it again. That slow, deliberate creak of a footstep on the upper floor. then another, and another. I stared up at the ceiling, listening. The footsteps moved directly above me, pacing in circles like someone was walking around my old bedroom. Then they stopped. Silence. I waited for a long time, trying to calm my breathing. But just when I thought it was over, the voice came, a soft whisper, so faint I thought it was the TV at first. "Why did you move?" I turned the TV off. The room went silent except for my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then, from directly above, I heard that same voice whisper again, clearer this time. "I can see you." I bolted out of the house and sat in my car until sunrise. When I finally went back inside, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The upstairs window, the one in my old bedroom, was open. Over the next few days, I stopped sleeping altogether. I'd hear whispers in the walls, faint footsteps in the hallway, even during daylight. I even started to feel eyes on me when I showered or cooked or sat in the living room, but there was never anyone there. Until the night I checked the basement. I hadn't been down there since moving in. The door was in the kitchen floor, one of those old wooden trapdoors with a brass ring handle. I only went down because I thought I heard humming, soft and slow, like a lullaby. When I lifted the door, the smell hit me first. Damp wood, iron, and something else. Something foul. I climbed down the steps, flashlight shaking in my hand. The basement was huge, stone walls lined with shelves covered in dust. But at the far end, I saw something that didn't belong. A recliner chair, old, worn, with an indentation in the seat cushion, as if someone had just been sitting there. And right next to it was a pile of Polaroid photos scattered across the floor. They were pictures of me, sleeping. Every photo showed me in bed, from different nights, always taken at the same time. 3:03 a.m. My hands started trembling. I flipped through the stack, and at the bottom, I found one that made me drop the flashlight. It was me, lying on the couch downstairs from the night before. The window behind me was wide open, and in the photo, behind the couch, a tall figure stood in the shadows, his face turned toward the camera. I ran. I didn't even grab my keys or shoes. I sprinted to my car, drove to the nearest gas station, and called the police. They went through the house later that night but found no one. Nothing. No chair, no photos, not even footprints. The officer said the basement looked untouched, like it hadn't been opened in years. But here's the part that haunts me most. When I got my car back from where I'd left it, there was something tucked under the windshield wiper. A Polaroid. It showed me in the gas station parking lot, sitting in my car, talking on the phone. The timestamp on the corner read 3:03 a.m. I moved out of Maine the next day and never looked back. But no matter where I go, every night, I still wake up at the exact same time. 3:03. Sometimes I think I see movement in the corner of my room, or the faint reflection of someone standing just beyond the doorway. And once, when I checked my phone in the dark, I found a new picture in my gallery. One I didn't take. It was me. Asleep. I never believed in bad luck until I moved into that house in upstate New York. I was 29, freshly out of college, and desperate for independence. The apartment I'd been living in was crumbling and overpriced, so when I found a modest 2-story house for rent on a quiet street in Catskill, it felt like a blessing. The owner, a frail old woman named Mrs. Callahan, handed me the keys with a strange hesitation, her eyes lingering on me longer than seemed necessary. She smiled but whispered, "Just don't go in the little room." I thought she was joking. I thought she was eccentric. Most old landlords are. The house seemed normal enough. Freshly painted walls, wooden floors that creaked with character, and large windows that let sunlight stream in. There was a small garden out back, overgrown but charming, and a fireplace that smelled faintly of cedar. I moved in on a Friday, unpacked my things, and even invited a friend over that night to celebrate. She loved the house instantly. We joked about how cute the little upstairs room was, the one Mrs. Callahan had warned me about. I peeked inside. It was tiny, barely enough space for a twin bed and a chair. Nothing seemed dangerous, though I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that settled in my stomach as soon as I crossed the threshold. That first night, everything felt normal. I watched TV, fell asleep, and dreamed the way new homeowners do, blissfully unaware of anything lurking in the shadows. But the next morning, I noticed something odd. The little room's door, which I'd closed the night before, was slightly ajar. I was sure I had locked it. I pushed it open, looked inside, and saw nothing unusual. Just the same twin bed, the small chair, and the pale morning light filtering through a dusty window. I shook my head. It's just an old house. It settles. You're imagining things. That night I slept in the living room, trying to ignore the tiny room entirely. Around 2:47 a.m. I woke up to a faint scratching sound. Not from the floorboards, not from the wind, but from inside the little room. I froze. The scratching grew louder, slower, deliberate, like fingernails dragging across wood. I forced myself to get up and peek inside. The chair was gone. I remember standing there, heart thumping, staring at the empty room. I could feel my palms sweating, my stomach twisting into knots. The scratching stopped, replaced by a whispering. Soft, unintelligible, but undeniably there. I slammed the door shut and locked it, shaking, and slept with every light on. The following day, I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. Stress, maybe. Moving is exhausting. But that night, I made the mistake of checking on the room, just a glance. The door was closed when I left the living room, but as I crept toward it, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Tiny scratches etched into the wooden floor, forming words. At first, I couldn't read them. Then, as my eyes adjusted, I realized they spelled, "I see you." I backed away. My hands shook. I didn't sleep at all that night. The scratching became a nightly ritual, always the same time, always accompanied by whispers I couldn't understand. I tried talking to Mrs. Callahan about it, but when I called, the line went dead before she could answer. I went to the house to confront her, and she met me on the porch, tears in her eyes. "I warned you," she said quietly. "You were supposed to leave it alone. Never, ever go in that room." "Why?" I asked. She shook her head. It's not safe. People have disappeared in that room before. I thought no one would rent this place again. But now, you've awakened it." I thought she was crazy. That night the whispers became words. Clear, taunting, cruel. Come to me." I tried locking the door, chaining it, even stuffing towels in the gap. Nothing worked. The door would always be open in the morning. And then, one night, it started talking to me. Not with words, but images. Fleeting, dark, half-seen flashes in the corner of my vision. Faces of children, faces of women, all staring, screaming silently. And the room, it seemed to breathe. The walls pulsed, dark shadows crawling along the corners, reaching for me. I couldn't take it anymore. I called a friend to stay over. She arrived late, and for a while things seemed normal. But around 3:13 a.m., the whispers started again. My friend froze. We both heard it, a creaking, dragging sound coming from upstairs. The little room's door slowly creaked open. A shadow slipped out, stretching along the hallway like black smoke. I grabbed my friend, yelling for her to run, but she stopped, staring at something behind me. I turned. The chair had moved. It was in the middle of the hallway, rocking gently, though no one was sitting in it. Then I saw the scratches, long, deep, forming words on the wooden floor. "Join us." We ran. I grabbed as many belongings as I could, shoved them into her car, and left. We didn't stop driving until we reached a motel hundreds of miles away. I didn't sleep for 2 nights. Every sound made me jump, every creak of a floorboard, every gust of wind against the window. A week later, I got a call from Mrs. Callahan. She sounded calm. "You should come back," she said. "It misses you." I didn't answer, but I couldn't escape. Over the next few months, I would find things in my apartment, scratches on my bedroom door, moving slightly in ways that defied physics, photos taken from angles I hadn't been photographed from, and always, a faint whisper calling me by name, dragging me back to that house. It wasn't just a room. It was alive. It fed on attention. It watched. It remembered. And the worst part, it had a hunger that never left. I realized too late that when Mrs. Callahan said never enter, she wasn't warning me about physical danger. She was warning me about being seen. One night I had a vivid dream. I was back in the house. I stood in the hallway outside the little room. The door was closed, but I could feel it. Waiting. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Slowly, it creaked open. Inside, the room was infinite. Endless darkness, dotted with small pinpoints of light. Faces swirled in the void, the missing, the lost, the terrified. And at the center, a figure stood, taller than any human, faceless, shadowed, reaching toward me. I woke up screaming. But when I opened my eyes, I wasn't in my bed. I was in the little room. The walls pressed against me, the shadows coiled, black smoke licking my skin. And then, I saw it. The chair, occupied. But not by a person. By the shadows of all those who had disappeared before me, fused into one shape, staring, waiting. I blacked out. When I came to, I was in my apartment again, trembling, covered in sweat. The little room haunted every thought. Every sound, every shadow made my heart race. I started recording every sound at night, trying to capture proof. And in every single recording, there was one thing. Faint scratching. Always at the same time, always the same pattern. And sometimes, if I listened closely, I could hear it. Faint, almost imperceptible. My own name being whispered back to me. It's been years. I've moved dozens of times, changed my number, and even quit my job to stay away from anything that might resemble that house. But every night, without fail, I wake up around 2:47 a.m., heart hammering. And I know, somewhere that little room is waiting, watching, and it remembers me. One night I received a package, no return address. Inside was a small folded photograph. I opened it with trembling hands. It was me, standing in the doorway of that little room, smiling. Only, I wasn't smiling when the photo was taken. The chair was there, rocking gently, and behind it, a shadow taller than the door, faceless, waiting. I haven't answered the phone when Mrs. Callahan calls anymore, but sometimes late at night I still hear it, that soft, patient whisper drifting through the walls of my apartment. Come back. And I know. I never really left. I never thought a house could change your life, or make you question your sanity. But after what happened at the house I rented in Oregon, I can't think about a quiet neighborhood the same way again. It started when I found a quaint, two-story house tucked at the end of a cul-de-sac in a sleepy suburb just outside Portland. The yard was overgrown but had charm, the exterior a pale yellow with white trim, and a front porch swing that creaked slightly in the wind. The landlord, a polite but nervous man named Mr. Kent, mentioned that the previous tenant had left abruptly, saying they couldn't handle it. I didn't ask why. Rent was cheap, the neighborhood was quiet, and I needed a fresh start after a brutal breakup. The first few weeks were fine. I unpacked, cleaned, and slowly made the house feel like mine. But the first time I noticed anything unusual was during a morning jog. As I ran past the neighbor's yard on the right, a small white house with green shutters, I saw a man standing by their porch watching me. He didn't wave, didn't smile. He just stared. I waved anyway. He didn't move. I blinked, and he was gone. Odd, I thought. Maybe my mind was tired. Later that evening, as I unpacked boxes in the living room, I looked out the window toward that same house. And there he was again, standing in the exact same spot, perfectly still. My skin crawled. I called out to him. Nothing. I tried to ignore it. The first week I convinced myself I was imagining things, that maybe the yard had a statue I hadn't noticed. But then the whispers started. I first heard them in the kitchen late one night. A soft, almost imperceptible murmur coming from the walls. At first I thought it was the house settling, but the words became clear as I strained to listen. Get out! Get out! I froze. My hands shook as I pressed my ear to the wall. The voice came again, closer this time, urgent, desperate. But it wasn't a voice from outside. It was inside the house. I shook it off as a trick of my mind, though a deep unease settled in my chest. A week later, I met another neighbor, a cheerful woman named Carla living across the street. I casually asked about the man in the White House. She frowned. What man? She asked. There's no one there. The house has been empty for years. I blinked. No, there's someone. I see him. He's always outside watching. Carla shook her head. You've been here how long? That house has been empty for at least 10 years. No one's lived there since the old Jensen family disappeared. I laughed nervously, though my stomach dropped. Disappeared? Carla nodded. 3 of them. A man, a woman, and their son. The police never found them. That house. It's been abandoned since. I swallowed hard. My mind raced. That meant the man I had been seeing wasn't real. Not in any normal sense. That night I couldn't sleep. The whispers returned, this time louder, more insistent. Don't look out. Don't look out. I tried to cover my ears with a pillow, but the voice seemed to seep through anyway, shaking my chest, crawling beneath my skin. Around 2:45 a.m., I finally gave in. I crept to the living room window and peeked outside. The street was empty, quiet, perfectly still. But across the road in front of the abandoned house, a shadow moved. Not a person exactly, but a dark shape, shifting as though it were alive. I stepped back, heart pounding, and tripped over a box, sending a loud crash through the empty house. The shadow froze. Then it began moving toward me. Not walking, gliding, sliding along the yard, perfectly silent, impossibly fast. I backed away, fumbling for my phone. I called 911. The operator answered, but before I could explain, a soft whisper cut through the line. Leave. Now. The call dropped. I ran outside into the street, adrenaline fueling every step. The shadow stopped at the abandoned house, unmoving, and then vanished. The street was quiet again. The air smelled faintly of smoke, though there was no fire. I tried to rationalize it. Stress, lack of sleep, maybe a hallucination. But over the next week, the encounters increased. I'd see the shadow in reflections of windows, at the end of the hallway, in the middle of the day, in the corner of my bedroom at night. Sometimes I would catch glimpses of a face, pale, hollow eyes, a mouth frozen in a silent scream. Then came the footprints. I woke one morning to find muddy prints across my living room floor. Not mine. Not anyone I knew. They led from the front door straight to the hallway and stopped abruptly. I checked the locks. All secure. I called the landlord again, telling him what was happening. He hesitated, his voice low. You need to leave, he said. That house, it's not safe. Ever since the Jensen family vanished, strange things have been happening. No one ever stays long. Some never leave at all. But it wasn't just warnings anymore. I began to feel it inside the house. A presence that followed me, waited for me in empty rooms. The whispering became voices, shouting now, accusing me of trespassing, of looking, of noticing. One night I woke at 3:13 a.m., drenched in sweat. I could feel someone standing over me, breathing down my neck though the room was empty. I dared a glance. The shadow was there, hovering just past my bed, its hollow eyes fixed on me. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I ran from the room, down the stairs, and into the kitchen. The shadow followed, slipping across the walls, the ceiling, impossible and fluid. I backed into a corner. That's when I noticed it. The neighbor's house, the one that had been abandoned for 10 years, had a light on in the upstairs window. I had never seen it light before. The shadow slowly moved toward the window, stretching as it went. Its head turned toward me. And then I saw it. The Jensen family, or what was left of them. Their faces pale and twisted, eyes hollow, mouths open in silent screams. The shadow absorbed them, grew taller, taller than the house itself. It wasn't a person. It wasn't a family. It was something else, something alive, patient, waiting for anyone who dared to notice. And it had noticed me. I spent that night in my car, driving in circles, too scared to return. When I finally went back, I found something chilling. On my doorstep lay a small envelope, sealed and old, yellowed with age. Inside was a photograph, the Jensen family, standing in front of the house, and behind them, a figure. A shadow stretching across the yard, taller than the house, hollow eyes staring directly at the camera. I never stayed another night. I moved across the country. But the whispers followed me. The shadow still waits. And I know. The next time someone notices the house on Birch Hollow Lane, it will watch them too. Because some houses aren't just walls and wood. They remember. They wait. They hunt. And the neighbor, that neighbor, was never there.